thank you, everybody, for your patience. These things sometimes, take patience, and I'm glad you are hanging in here with us for this. A formal welcome to everybody. My name is John Restakis. I'll be moderating this series of lectures on Rojava. It's the second lecture in a series of 10. These lecture series are being co-sponsored by the Global University for Sustainability, by the Civil Diplomacy Center in Northeast Syria, and by Synergia Cooperative Institute, of which I am a co-founder. I am a lecturer in alternative economies for social change at the University of Victoria in British Columbia. And I have also written on Rojava, and I'm very, very privileged to participate in this important series of lectures. The second in this series is titled The Philosophy of Democratic Confederalism and Stateless Democracy. We will be having simultaneous translation, working between Kurdish, English, and Arabic. And our primary lecturer today is Nourshan Hussein. Nourshan has been working with us from the very beginning of this project, helping us organize it and coordinate it in her capacity as a member of the Civil Diplomacy Center in Northeast Syria. Nourshan is also a former co-chair of the municipalities committee in Afrin Canton in Rojava. And if we get lucky and Salua Guiga is able to join us when she makes the connection, Salua is cited as a respondent to the lecture. She is a member of the Women, Peace, and Security Committee since 2018. As part of FemWise Africa. She's affiliated with the African Union's Wise Persons Committee and a member of the executive board of the National Observatory for Defending the Civil Nature of the State. The structure of the program today is a formal lecture presentation by Nourshan. It will be about an hour in length. And that would normally be followed by a 20-minute response from Salua. In the event that Salua is not able to join us, we will field questions from participants in the webinar, and I may also have one or two responses myself after Nourshan's lecture. And so I will also, Nourshan, I'll let you know when we are 10 minutes to the hour, so you'll have some fair warning before you finish. So let's begin. Welcome, Nourshan. Please start when you are ready. And once again, thank you, everybody, for your patience and for joining us today. And I'll hand it over now to Nourshan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much all the participants today. Today, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to talk about the philosophy of democratic confederalism and the stateless democracy. At the beginning, we should say it's a very important topic for correcting the wrong terminology that's been used in about the revolution of Rojava, revolution of northern and eastern Syria, which is going on almost for 12 years. In the Rojava revolution, the first trigger that started in 2011 with the crisis in Syria, but it started even before that. The reason is that inequalities and also the distance between the people and the administration in this system, because the nation state that established in Syria was very distant, very alienated from the population, from the people. And all the resources of Syria was concentrated in the center. So security and everything was designed with a concern for security, military, and the state benefit interest. In a simple way, when we have a glance on the population in Syria, in the Middle East, in this geography, which is a very rich one, there is also pluralistic societies in terms of ethnicity, religion, and language. And before the revolution, Syria was a very centralistic state, and the left, the periphery is very poor, and all the different identities other than the official identity were being subjected to assimilation. And our line of resistance and our line of struggle together within the framework of Rojava revolution, it's based on reconstructing a political system in Syria. It's very different than the centralistic state. In the practice and in the theory, our aim, it's the formulation of democratic confederalism, which I'm going to talk today. Every part of the society which have been marginalized by the centralistic state and the rest of the society was very pro-nation state, an Arabic nation state. It turned into a chauvinistic Arab ideology. That's why we are now being targeted by all these centralistic Arab states, and there are some mispropaganda, then wrong propaganda disseminated against us. So it is an opportunity for us to clarify those misunderstandings and the defamations against us. Within the last 12 years, we have been fighting and trying to construct a new system here, which can also be an inspiration for anywhere else in the world, because we offer a solution for the fundamental problems in the region based on the multi-identities and respecting and accepting all the other diversities and differences in the region. And step by step, we are implementing this project, and we can also see the outcomes of it. And we are also acting against any kind of extremism in the region. Now, we also would like to the theoretical framework for our topic. What's the definition, the meaning of democratic confederalism? I can say democratic confederalism, it's not a way of administration. It's a completely different system. It's a system that existed throughout the history, because we know in the region the life was organized in the shape of confederalism, not in the shape of central governments or states. It's been like the 100-200 years for the first time that this kind of state emerged, and it is based on controlling and suppressing the population. The insistence of nation state is the monopoly of the capital and the governments. By gathering all the capital of the society or the country it's the only way to be able to control this gathered capital can be only the nation state. There are no other way to do it. Among the societies, we can say throughout history, there are not homogeneous societies. All the societies are very mixed and very colorful, and they all live together. You cannot determine a certain piece of land that there are only Kurds or only Turks or only Arabs live. They have always been living together, and it didn't cause any problems in the history. So that's the feature of the societies in the region, pluralistic and multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multi-religious. In the history, there have always been resistance and fight and struggle against so-called nation states, which was repressing the people. These rebels, these rebellions were asking for justice and equality and equal rights. Within the framework of the Democratic Confederalism, the most basic is the democratic modernity rather than the capitalist modernity. The states, because the nation states or this state only serve to the benefits, interests of the capitalist modernity, not the democratic modernity, because the essence for the world, essence for a coexistence of the peaceful life of the societies, it's a moral and political society, because the societies are very rich and it's composed of different social groups, and they have right to expression, right to knowledge, right to existence, right to self-organization. Through these rights and liberties, we can improve the society, and a peaceful society can exist thanks to these kind of rights and freedoms. Now we would like to talk about the topic of the historical background, historical framework of democratic confederalism. Peoples or the nations, they came from a tribal structure, and even in the cities, it's or even the people living in these, there has always been a contradiction between the tribes, peoples, nations against the nation states, because every time when the nation states were founded, they always brought this centralistic approach, and these people, these groups, they always ask for autonomy or a semi-autonomy. So there was always been a fight, a rival between the peoples and the nations and the nation states, because the nation states was imposing a very centralistic structure, gathering all the power and all the power in the center and ignoring the others living far from the center. Like the South American societies or African societies or the Asian societies, they have always resisted throughout history, and in some places this resistance still is going on. And the European tribes, they have always had a confederal structure until the foundation of nation states, and now they are still trying to have different similar structures, because the understanding of this tribal autonomous lifestyle still exists. It also had influence in the city states. They also had a similar structure of autonomy or semi-autonomy. And the European states, European societies, they still have as on a certain level, they have this structure, because you can also find different examples of autonomy or semi-autonomy or federalism in different parts of Europe. So it is a system that already existed, and we want to revive and adapt it to the Middle East, or to the region where we live. There is a fundamental question of the Middle East is as a Turkish-Kurdish conflict. As we know, the enemy, the strategic enemy of the Kurds, are those states who occupied Kurdistan, and among with they divided Kurdistan into 4 pieces and they shared them among 4 different states, and it's always been considered as a threat for these nations, the existence of the Kurds living in those countries. But when we talk about Turkish-Kurdish conflict, we cannot speak a conflict between the peoples coming throughout the history. No, the conflict is actually between the Kurdish people and the Turkish state, because when we look at the history, we can see that Kurdish people and Turkish people have always lived together for a long time, even since the tribal time, and we can find very good examples of coexistence and a peaceful life between the Kurdish and Turkish people. Back then, they had soft confederalism, and even within the framework of the empires, the Kurds always had their autonomy, and the Turks and the Kurds could live together. In the Kurdish history, and in the Zagros region, since from the time of the tribes, there always been a confederal structure. It started against the Sumerian, and they were also successful against the Sumerians to protect their confederal structure. People in the 7th century, with the migration from Central Asia, Turkish migration from Central Asia, it was a turning point in the Turkish history. They started establishing states and empires. But until then, even the Turkish societies living in the Central Asia, they were living in a confederal structure. So maybe nation state, which composes only maybe 1 or 2% of the human history, is now presented, launched as the only way of living and only way of administration. But it is a very small, tiny part of the human history. And before that, everybody was living in a confederal structure with autonomy. Another important point is Democratic Confederalism and the problems of the Middle East. The Middle East is a very problematic area, and there are so many different wars and conflicts taking place in different parts of the Middle East, which have been going on almost 400 years. Why is that so? When we compare the Middle East and Europe, we see that in Europe, in the feudal structure back in Europe, and the soft confederalism continued and allowed the European states go through a process, and eventually they also overcame their nationalism and religionism. However, the Middle East has failed to do so. We cannot see this ideological enlightenment in the Middle East. It's still very nation state dependent and also religion dependent, because the dogma or dogmatism in the Middle East is very strong, and it was like a concrete that cannot be broken. And in the Middle East, also authoritarian regimes are one of the reasons. And the third one is the extremism, or the very brutal oppression against any rebellion or any call for change in the Middle East. Is one of the reasons why the Middle East couldn't catch up with Europe in terms of the enlightenment and also changing their minds. And that's how those regimes continue existing in the Middle East. So we can say democratic confederalism can be the best solution for the solutions for the problems existing in the Middle East. Confederalism can solve all those problems. In other words, we can also say that as an essential point, crucial point, that geoculture of the Middle East to establish or shape its reflects on the geopolitics of the Middle East, because the richness of the Middle East should be reflected in the politics of the Middle East. Now, we shouldn't be mistaken. We are not talking about the federalism or confederalism of the states. We are talking about the democratic confederalism built by the society itself. It's also a part of the nature of the societies. We are talking about the democratic confederalism as a path to peace and justice and brotherhoods and sisterhoods of the people living in the region. It is an alternative against the capitalist modernity, and the alternative should be democratic confederalism. In the Middle East, there are very different fundamental problems, but insisting on the nation states in the Middle East, the outcome will be catastrophic, because the nation states, the conflicts like between Israel and Palestine, or between the Kurds and the Shias and Sunnis in Iraq, or the sect conflict based on the sects between Sunnis and Shiites, or the fight or the conflict in Lebanon or in Sudan can escalate as long as we insist on nation states in the region. So we also see that the Arab in the past, we also witnessed different catastrophic incidents like the massacre, genocide on the Christian minorities, Christians in Anatolia against Armenian, against Assyrian. These are also the outcome of this insistence of the nation state. The same thing also applies for Pakistan and India conflict. In general, the reason of all these conflicts is the capitalist hegemony. It is an outcome of the nation states. because nation states imposes itself on these people, and the capitalist hegemony is supporting these nation states to assimilate and to oppress all the differences and the diversities in the region. When they can, they try to destroy people physically. Even if they fail to do so, they try this way that they can assimilate and change the differences and ignore the differences. So either physically or culturally, these people will be assimilated and melt. For the Arabic states, we see that one of the reasons why they cannot find solution is because the Arabic society was also divided and separated by the means of nation states. And when we look at the main reasons of the conflicts in the Middle East is the nation state. Therefore, that's why we have 23 Arab states in the Middle East, and these states, they always failed to have a proper unity. In 1956, there was an initiative between Syria and Egypt to start a unity between both countries, but it couldn't survive because it wasn't based on democratic values, but only Arab nationalism. And we see that no problems of these Arab countries, or as they say, Arab cause, couldn't be solved. And the reason is nation state and the religious nationalism. And also the other one is ethno-tribalism and civil society engineering, because they are they are doing the civil and they are doing the social engineering and basing or in promoting the values of patriarchy within the Arabic speaking societies. The borders of the Arab countries, the history of Arab countries, their national times, their systems, and their socialization, or the societies that they define themselves as nations, they are very artificial societies. All the nations are artificial structures built, made by the hegemonic powers. Iraq, for example, before 1920, it didn't exist. You couldn't find Iraq on the map. There was no region called Iraq. And today's Iraq was founded according to the interests of the imperial powers like Britain, especially because of the oil. Now Iraq is it's like a cradle of the chaos of the Middle East. You can find all different kind of conflicts within one country. In fact, no social theories can analyze Iraq, how they can actually find a solution for that country or for its deep-rooted problems. Let's continue with the example of the Jews. On one side, the Jews, they are one of the main indigenous components of societies of the Middle East. So massacring societies or denying their right to exist there, it is a reason for all the conflicts in the Middle East. But their existence should be seen as an as a democratic nation, not as a religious nation, because as long as they define their existence as a religious state, it will not bring a solution to the problems. But they can define themselves as a democratic nation and have relationships, improve their relationships with their Muslim neighbors, instead of stigmatization or separating themselves as a nation, as a religious state. They have to have a more democratic culture, more inclusive approach, so that they can find solutions. So when they have a democratic nation, if they manage to create a democratic nation in the region, they can gather also the Arabs and the neighboring nations and societies within the same structure, and they can have a peaceful life there. For example, the Arab League, the unity of the Arabs, but the Arab League has failed to play an efficient or effective role in terms of solving problems. Why? Because it is a League of the Arab States. It's not the League of the Arab societies or Arab nations. And of course, we can talk even longer, even for days, about this topic, but in the 21st century, we see that the improvement of this democratic solution perspective emerging among the Kurds and the Jews. So it is very important. It can be a historical change. The democratization of the Arab nations or Arab societies can bring an historical change. And now I would like to continue with Iran. Iran is it's a very interesting case. Instead of geography and the politics, it is also one of the main issues in the Middle East, which has influence on entire Middle East, and it also should be taken into consideration while preparing a roadmap. Despite all the efforts of the centralistic Iranian state, there is actually de facto federal system in Iran, because the people of Iran, they are already ready for a democratic confederalism. Arabs, Baluchs, Kurds, Arabs, Turkmens, Azeris, they are ready to have a confederal structure with the Persian people of Iran, or the movement of women. They are also playing a very crucial role by leading the revolution in Iran. Here, we have to mention Kurdish philosopher Öcalan's. We have to cite his ideas, because he says in a democratic confederal Iran can bring a solution for entire Middle East, and a democratic Iran or democratization Iran based on the democratic confederalism can affect the entire region of the Middle East and be one of the main pillars for a peaceful life. So as he mentioned, he underlines that this natural structure of confederalism within Iran, and he says this can be applied to other places, other regions of within the Middle East, because throughout the history, that's how they lived for thousands of years. They coexist with the different people living here. So it is a de facto and not hidden, but not an official one. And now I would like to talk about another topic for the Middle East. The role of the Kurds in terms of building, creating democratic confederalism. We know that the autonomous administration, the experience of autonomous administration in the north and eastern Syria was led by the Kurds. Of course, there are all the components, societies and peoples and diversities, they find their place within this system, but the Kurds led this process. Why? Because there is one reason. The Kurds, throughout the history, they have always been a stateless society. They protected themselves on their territories. They have always fought for autonomy. Now, we have around 50, 60 million of Kurds without a state, but yet they still could protect and preserve their existence, and they continue their life. And these all happened out of the scope of a state, but the natural way of organization among the Kurdish society. The Kurds in Iran, therefore, can serve for a democratic, confederal Iran. The Kurds in Iraq can also serve or fight or promote a confederalistic, democratic Iraq. The same thing applies for the Kurds in Turkey. The Kurds in Turkey can play a very essential and fundamental role in terms of establishing or democratic republic, a secular democratic republic in Turkey. So this is the main purpose of the Kurds in Turkey, to create a democratic republic based on secularism and the universal values. Unless these countries are democratized, the conflict will never be solved. The same thing also in Syria. In Syria, the Kurds have taken very practical steps towards creation of a democratic Syria, multilingual, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious. So in other words, we can say the Kurds are a very a popular strength for the democratization, and they can play a significant role, a crucial role for the peace in the Middle East. Following the First World War, all these nation states that created in the region, they confused everyone. And until the foundation of the nation states following the First World War, the Middle East was organized in a confederal way. When we look at the Ottoman Empire, there was this confederalism within the Ottoman Empire. All the Kurdish regions, they had Kurdish emirates in the Kurdish region, and they were enjoying autonomy or semi-autonomy. So the question or the solution is actually going back to original roots, which was the democratic confederalism, rather than insisting on the nation state. There are several conferences there are several conferences with the title of globalization of the social democracy. It is also very important and related to the democratic confederalism. In this conference in Porto Alegre could be an answer, a response to the needs of the people in the region, and it should promote the confederalism, local confederalism. So there should be local confederalism, and then regional confederalism, and at the end, the aim, the purpose, the goal should be a global confederalism. So can we create democratic confederalism in the Middle East based on the perspective of vision of global confederalism? This is the question, and the answer of this question, it's now is a task for the scientists and for those who are focusing and working in the field of ethics and politics. But this is a proposal from us. And I would like to now continue with another topic, democratic confederalism and the relationship with the civilization and the capitalism. What kind of relationship do they have? How can we define the relationship between democratic confederalism and civilization and capitalism? We can say the tribal system and the confederalism or city democracies like the Athena in the history. Athena was one of the first examples of the democracy in the history. On the communes and the echoes, they are talking about equality, and religion hasn't become a part of the administration or used or misused by the state. There are councils and the social groups, the societies. These are all the components are that we can list within the scope of democratic civilization. However, the history of democratic civilization was not written properly. The written history was written by the states or by the heroes or the victorious of the nation states, of the existing states, and they all presented themselves as heroes of the history. Therefore, the relationship between the democratic civilization and capitalism, that's how we can actually define the relationship between them. Democratic modernity versus capitalist modernity. It is a relationship. So a moral political society versus a capitalist society or the capital. And against industrialism, we can create an ecological society. And instead of nation state, we can create democratic societies, confederal societies. In other words, we can say capitalist modernity against democratic modernity. There has always been a conflict between these two. And the struggle will always continue against the capitalist modernity. Sometimes they might go in a parallel way, but most of the time they will fight against each other. And we see that capitalist modernity is gradually being weakened, and democratic modernity is getting stronger and stronger. So through this, we can also create our confederalism based on the democratic modernity. For the soil for the water and for the energy, it should be a very fair approach, and it should belong everyone. But nation states and the states let's a certain social group own the soil, water, and energy. So very small part of society gets richer and richer, and the great majority suffers in the poverty. And nation state also uses the middle class and abuse the middle class or existence of the middle class for its existence. Another topic is the relationship of the confederalist democratic confederalism with the nation states. The solution for the problems of Middle East and for entire world is not resorting nation states. It is not a system, it's not a relationship that the nation state can be melted within the confederalism. No. It is a relationship that the society should become a subject in the face of the state, not an object of the state, but it should be a subject itself. Because it will be a fight between the civil society and the state, because the state always wants to oppress the society. As long as the states or nation states exist, as long as these states which serve capitalism exist, you cannot talk about as autonomous civil society or peoples who can be subject in their own life and in regarding the decisions relating to their life. So creating a new state instead of a nation state, it's not going to be a solution either. The state cannot bring a solutions. Every society can have their semi-autonomous structures. They have freedom, and they have also right to vote for their future and function and coexist in a confederal structure. Therefore, confederalism cannot be realized through the authority of a state, but it can be realized by the activities and efforts of the civil society. We know that nation states are based on the middle class, bourgeois class, and it is a class that wants to have everything. And the fascism, actually, it starts with the middle class bourgeois administration. We know these classes and the states, they appeared after very difficult wars and always militarized by the army.
Nourshan, you have
and this system
10 minutes.
Okay, I think I will explain my conclusion within the last 10 minutes now. So we can say, what's the role of the democratic confederalism in terms of the solving the fundamental problems in the Middle East? We can give very practical examples. For example, if we reach the public opinion, and if we ask the people, the public opinion, I think they will choose a life based on the global confederalism. Because when we look at the wars, that if two states are fighting or they are in a war, it is not in order to serve the benefits or benefit of the people or population, but it is always as a rivalry for the benefits of the capitalism and benefit interest of the states rather than the societies. Nation states and when we look at the United States of America or the European Union, why do we have these structures? Were they founded? It's because for it's a formula for the problems of those states, and it is also a participatory democracy. So the same thing can be applied for the Middle East. We can have a similar structure, and this project is very in a concrete way. We can also name them. One of them, the project of the Northern African Confederalism. And another confederalism of the Eastern Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan. Another one can be confederalism of Central Asia, and another confederalism of the South Arabia. These are the ideas based or coming from Öcalan's ideas, and this is his proposal, his suggestion of solution, because these projects can later create the Middle East confederalism, and it can be an alternative for the great Middle East projects offered by the US. The democracy culture from Europe can also be extended, disseminated in the Middle East. And now before I finish, I would like to talk about the stateless democracy. It can be a solution, a fundamental solution for the problems. The fundamental problems. These are in the Middle East or in the other regions. The creation of a stateless democracy is not limited to the boundaries or the borders. And the stateless democracy, it doesn't depend on the approval or permission of the states. It is a thing that we organize ourselves. We start organizing ourselves in a democratic way. So it can be from time, territory, or the authority free. It will be a way that it's decided by the society, and the existing parties, political parties, can work for the consciousness, awareness of these democratic ideas and democratic confederalism, and the society should become an actor, because if you leave everything to the state, the society will be very weakened. But if you leave everything to the society, then there might be a chaos. Therefore, the the social movement shouldn't aim at destroying the existing state, but democratizing them, and it has to be on a civil way. It cannot be done through weapons. And the alternative shouldn't be founding another state as an alternative to the existing state. It should be a civil organization of the society on the democratic values, and it will be, because once you bring it with the weapon, and if you create a state, eventually that revolution and that state will be a dogma like all the other communist countries before, and eventually they will fail. What is necessary to be done? It's necessary to be done to organize the society and change the minds of the people. And the states, actually, they govern the people, but democracy can guide the people, guide the society. And democracy is based on the approval of the society. And the nation states, they assign bureaucrats, they assign politicians. But democratic confederalism, you go, and that is a radical democracy, and you deny these assigned bureaucrats, the bureaucrats assigned by the central government, but they should be elected by the people. And the democracy and in the system, there should be the voluntary participation of the people in the system. At last, I would like to say from philosopher Öcalan, in the Sociology of Freedom, in his book, he says, when we talk about the confederalism in the Middle East or in the Northeastern Confederalism, we are talking as if we are talking about a utopia, but it is not a utopia. It is rather a historical fact. It existed in the past. So we are not talking about a utopia, but we are talking about reviving a system which existed in the history, and which is the best way it's the most suitable way for the region. And democratic confederalism of the Middle East can also lead for the democratic confederalism of the world. These are the topics that I wanted to explain. I hope they were clear enough, and I'm happy to answer any question or any discussions. Thank you very much for your patience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nourshan. Very interesting. So many things to respond to here. But I want to welcome our colleague, Salwa, has finally found a way into our session. So welcome. I gave an introduction to you early in my opening remarks, Salwa, so I don't think I need to introduce you again. But I would welcome your comments.
At the beginning, I would like to thank the organizers of this meeting for the invitation, and greetings to all participants, and special thanks to our colleague and friend Nourshan for the effort and for the lecture that opened the door for us to reflect, as well as opened the way for us to hope for a better world based on the pursuit of ensuring common interest of people and achieving justice among all the various local, national, and regional, and even global levels. The intervention will not be academic as much as it is an interaction with the concepts put forward regarding democracy in general, and the philosophy of Democratic Confederation based on the actual reality in the Middle East and North Africa in the 21st century. There is no doubt that the comparison between the reality with all the negatives and obstacles that we know on one hand, and the philosophical concept of democratic confederation and non-state democracy, on the other hand, reflects the paradox between the theoretical intellectual dimension and the practical field dimension. Nourshan pointed out, there is no doubt that these projects are just utopias. It is impossible to achieve scientific practices for a great life without great utopias. There is no doubt that the relationship between the theoretical and practical dimension is dialectical, and the interaction between them is essential. But I consider that the philosophical dimension of a democratic confederation can only represent a human vision and dream that we are entitled to question the possibilities of achieving on the ground. Realism requires us to define the vision and strategic dimension that can be achieved by dividing them into main objectives on the short, medium, and long term, while ensuring results, because without guaranteed results, vision doesn't gain value. The reality in the region places on all of us a heavy historical responsibility to consolidate democratic foundations and achieve human dignity, social justice, effective freedom, and true equality among human beings, regardless of their affiliations. We all belong to the globe and to universal human values, regardless of our many particularities and diverse identities. When I think of the scientific, cognitive, and industrial progress achieved by human beings, which has made us transcend the boundaries of space to cross distance between continents in a few hours, and to dialogue despite the distance directly through social media as we are doing now, we cannot ignore the universal nature of human relations in the reality of the 21st century, that is, the common values that we must adhere to in order to achieve security and peace in our various countries and in the world, and for the sake of humanity. In this regard, I recall a wonderful quote by the Syrian poet Nizar Qabbani, whose phrases were in my mind as he described the impact of being opened and his experiences and travels on shaping the features of his cosmic poetry and the dimensions of his human feeling when he says, "From the enormous repertoire of fonts, colors, sounds, and from my travels in books and my travels within human, I have a dictionary of poetry, the vocabulary of which doesn't belong to a specific land or country. The dictionary has no nationality. It isn't Damascene, Egyptian, Lebanese, French, or Spain, and isn't even Chinese. In my poetry, I carry the nationalities of the whole world, and I belong to one place, which is humanity. This puts us in front of a number of challenges that we must plan and develop mechanisms to face. This includes the cultural challenge. Beyond the concept of identity within its narrow limits, which the novelist Amin Maalouf considers a murderous identity. These identities caused a series of tragedies experienced by Yazidi women who were subjected to captivity, gang rape, death threats, and torture when ISIS besieged Yazidi areas in Sinjar, northern Iraq, in the summer of 2014. Extremist identities caused men to be executed and captured and trafficked in slave markets in Syria. Thousands of girls and women, some as young as 9 years old, were sold in such markets set up in Raqqa, Homs, Aleppo, and Deir ez-Zor governorates during the ISIS offensive. These murderous identities have been rooted through the Arab Islamic history since the era of Islamic conquests. The bloody conquests remind me of the tragedies experienced by the people of North Africa in the 9th century, when the conquerors returned to the Islamic East with the captives of women and the wealth they had seized or robbed from the Amazigh. As a human rights activist primarily interested in women's rights, when I recall the rights achieved for Tunisian women through the Personal Status Code, which was issued by the President Habib Bourguiba, I cannot help but recall the peculiarities of the indigenous people of Tunisia. The history of Tunisian women actors goes back to more than 3,000 years. I will limit myself to mentioning some symbols to try to understand the Tunisian female character, and to highlight the value of digging up the historical heritage in order to raise awareness of the depth of civilization in building the vision now and in the future. When I mention Alisa, the founder of Carthage Empire in the 9th century, which was great as Rome and had a constitution that the Greek philosopher Aristotle considered better than the constitution of Athens, and Saint Félicité or Saint Perpétue, who chose to die for freedom of belief, and credit of women who left behind the first book written by a Tunisian woman for the next generations of women after her, about the spirit of sacrifice for freedom nearly 2,000 years ago. And the priestess, the barbarian leader who raised with her army to repel the Arab expansion on Africa in the 7th century AD, and to be killed in defense of her homeland and the independence of her people. I remember the political role played by Tunisian women 1,500 years ago, and the first modern school for girls was founded in 19th century in the Tunisian capital, and then spread many schools. And then many schools were opened for girls in many parts of Tunisia that time, which reflects the awareness which Tunisian women had that time. This is how Tunisian women were raised. So the Tunisian women won't take a step back, whatever happened and whatever they are subjected to. Therefore, all attempts by political Islam movements which sought to do so failed without results during the previous decade, which we call or consider a dark decade. It isn't surprising to see such a view in Northeast Syria, and it isn't surprising to see such development and practices by Kurdish women in the Kurdish regions in the Middle East. The Kurdish Mahsa Amini is a good example of this. It is a comprehensive vision that is in harmony with the philosophy of Abdullah Öcalan and represents a strategic vision for human society based on the realization of humanity on earth. Therefore, he is entitled to be considered the philosopher of the time. The bright social philosophical vision which Öcalan advocated for achieving individual freedom and freedom of society and building a practical political project that seeks to change reality is considered by the West a threat to their economic and political interests. On the other hand, it represents a destabilization of prevailing mentalities and reactionary policies in the region. Therefore, Abdullah Öcalan's project is based on awareness, changing mentalities. This change exposes the enslavement mentality which the West behaves towards countries whose natural and human resources is still exploited. If we make the link between the political, social, humanitarian spheres, we see the manifestation of a patriarchal and authoritarian mentality deeply rooted in mentalities towards women as well as towards vulnerable countries or powerless countries. In the face of this reality, we cannot fail to see the difficulty of tasks and the gravity of the responsibility to achieve the goals, a reality that places on all of us a heavy historical responsibility to consolidate democratic foundations and guarantee human dignity, social justice, freedom, and true equality among human beings, regardless of their affiliations. The French writer Saint-Exupéry says in the story Le Petit Prince, If I'm different from you, I do not demean you as much as I raise your value. When comparing the humanitarian principles and cultural, social, and political reality in Middle East and North Africa, we have to ask, how can a democratic confederation be achieved in countries where illiteracy remains alarming, whose laws do not provide for compulsory education, de facto equality, and citizenship? How can the democratic confederation be realized when laws relating the personal status still provide for men's the right to polygamy, allow the marriage of minors, allow female genital mutilation, and do not share inheritance equally between males and females? There is no real democracy. De facto equality. Can equality be achieved without the widespread consolidation of citizenship education through educational programs and awareness-filled campaigns, with the involvement of the media in disseminating them? Can this be achieved without political will? Therefore, in addition to the cultural change, it is a fundamental objective to take into account political challenge. How can a democratic confederation be achieved without consolidating the foundations of a civil state ruled by civilians, not the military, religious sects, and clergy in general? The civil state is based on the principle of separation of religion and politics and is incompatible with the theoretic state. It is a state of citizenship, the rule of law, which can only be substantive law. There shall be no discrimination among citizens on the basis of religion, language, race, color, gender, or ideological or political difference. As Tunisian Dr. Mohammed Talibi said, religion isn't an identity, a culture, or a nation. It is a personal spiritual relationship between a human being and the God. We may once again ask, how can a democratic confederation be achieved in the absence of a civil state, which is also based on respect for freedom of belief, respect for freedom of opinion and expression, political pluralism, as all parties and groups have the right to access power through democratic elections, ensure the implementation of the concept of citizenship that is on the basis of equality of all citizens in law, rights, and duties without discrimination between them, commitment to the principle of gender equality without reservation, relying on universal principles stipulated in international conventions. In the face of these basic principles for achieving democracy in the Middle East, in light of the cultural, social, and political reality, in the face of the various ideological, sectarian, and nationalist obstacles rooted in mentalities, the question remains with regard to what my friend Nourshan presented regarding the possibility of building a democratic confederation, when she raised the question of direct democracy and that each entity has its own opportunity to build its own confederation from local to global. Democratic confederations aren't content with organizing within a single state. They can organize themselves as much as they want beyond borders from supreme confederations and have their own diplomats. while the idea theoretically seems useful in achieving direct democracy, some of the experiences that our country has experienced, for example, regarding municipal work, considering that the municipal law allows the municipality to decide freely and establish relations with foreign parties without reference to the central authority or government, there would be no the central authority created some problems that can be taken as an example and be avoided in the future experiences. And the strategy would be not to leave the work for authority. There would be no democracy, and if you leave the work for the public, chaos will prevail. The issue remains on the table in the academic field and scientific and philosophical research, but the reality requires all of us to engage in awareness and field work, because groups adapt to the reality, to the real environment. In my opinion, Abdullah Öcalan's realistic outlook based on the phased completion of Democratic Nation project remains the main reference. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Salua. I have a question that I like to pose. Nourshan, you stated a number of times that the nation state is essentially, I think you were saying, supported and utilized by capitalism, its form of capitalist modernity. I question this because the nation state has equally been used by non-capitalist regimes, like communist regimes, for example, in Russia, or monarchist regimes that are pre-capitalist, or some hybrid form of capitalism and state capitalism, as in China. So I don't think it's the case that the nation state is a creation solely of capitalism or capitalist regimes. Rather, it is utilized by elites of various kinds, of many kinds, whether they are capitalist elites or socialist elites or corporativist elites or fascist elites. The nation state is very useful for all of them. So I wonder if you could respond to that.
I think it's a very important contribution or a question, because nation states, especially the last 200 years, they developed very considerably and became stronger. And all the conflict and wars and violence used by the nation states over the society. And when we look at this period, the global capitalists, they have always supported nation states. And also because these nation states are serving the interests of these huge companies. And we see the nation states are being supported or fed by the capitalist system. And in the Middle East, the map of the Middle East is being changed and organized according to the interest of the capitalist. In my opinion, nation state became it was an answer to the real socialism. The main problem in Soviets, when they were fighting against capitalists, instead of creating alternatives or the rights of the people, rights of the proletariat to return them, they made a critical mistake. That mistake was they created the system of domination of proletariat as an alternative to nation states. So that also is one of the reasons that capitalism could renew itself. So the main problem of the Soviets was not creating an alternative, but using the wrong method because they also they wanted a centralized state. Instead of destroying the central state and returning the rights of the people and proletariat to them, they created another centralist structure, and used proletariat. So instead of the domination of state, they brought the domination of the proletariat. It was also a mistake. Maybe Lenin, Karl Marx, or many other philosophers they were interpreted in a different way. But Öcalan, in this matter, it values real socialism. It really considers the experience of real socialism to be very important, but he also evaluates real socialism very critically, because it didn't return to the roots of the people and the proletariat, but they just want to have a rival in terms of being a centralistic domination of the proletariat. So it is the same thing that nation states creating themselves on their dogmas was also the case in the Soviets. So if you ask a question, why not we can apply the European Union in the Middle East? Why don't we start an initiative to change the minds in the Middle East? So I think it's always been the problem that the Westerns, they always approach the Middle East with an Orientalistic approach. They insist on nation states. So once we get over this problem, then we can go back and we will manage to create and establish the democracy in the Middle East. Thank you very much for your question.
Okay, this is a long-term discussion. Okay, anybody else would like to pose a question or a comment? Now's the time. We have a question saying, I would like to know more about democratic confederalism other than Öcalan's writings. What texts in English can people suggest, please? Good question. I can offer something that may be of interest to people. A recent work of mine, Civilizing the State, Reclaiming Politics for the Common Good, does have an extensive section on democratic confederalism and uses actually the experience of Rojava and democratic confederalism as a reference for interpreting Öcalan's teachings in terms of democratizing the state and civilizing the state, as I call it. So that's one thing you can look for, Civilizing the State by John Ristakis. But Nourshan, perhaps you have some other suggestions about other sources for democratic confederalism that people can search as well as Öcalan?
I can suggest Öcalan's book, actually, Sociology of Freedom, is a very important source. It's one of the main sources for Öcalan's. That's also the book that I use for in the preparation of my presentation. But there are other philosophers who are talking about civilization, or Mary Bookchin, Anandordi. There are other philosophers that wrote in this topic. Maybe later we can prepare a reading list, or as a list of sources. We can share it with the others. and we can share it with the other friends, and we can make a list of books that we can suggest.
Meg Ammons also posed a question. I'm interested in hearing or learning more about the role of digital technology in either supporting or enabling the system of democratic confederalism. Interesting question. I can make a suggestion about this. I would suggest looking at, and I'll write it down here, the work, articles on the P2P Foundation. The P2P Foundation has a number of works on digital technology and peer-to-peer networks. And I believe it includes some articles in there on democratic confederalism and its relationship to digital technology. So have a look at the P2P Foundation, and you might also look at the work of Michelle Bowens, who was one of the founders of the P2P Foundation, and Vasilis Kostakis. I'm putting those in the chat. Anybody else have any suggestions around this question of digital technology and its connection to either supporting or enabling democratic confederalism? Nourshan, have you your folks actually considered this question of digital technology and how you use it to support the work you're doing?
As far as I understood from the question, how we can share information through the technology about the implementation of the democratic confederalism, I can suggest that we can have solidarity or network between those groups who are looking for alternatives. For example, in the north and northeastern Syria, we have connection with the Zapatistas, for the movements who are not looking for creating or founding a central state, but as an alternative. So we are in touch with them through different networks. And also there is another website, Quest for Alternative. It's a website. So what I mean that we can use technology to create alliances through internet, through the digital resources, and we can introduce ourselves, we can support ourselves. So it will be, it will let us save lots of time, and we can create alliances, and together we can actually go on this path, on this global democratic confederalism. We can work together. Of course, it's very weak. We have to criticize ourselves that the international support, international alliances in this matter is very limited. It had to be much more, and technology makes it very easy for us actually reach out to people in anywhere in the world. So we have to use it more.
I also posted a couple of other references for this question of digital technology and democratic confederalism. I will suggest that people look at the work of Barcelona en Común in Spain. And I will write that here. They have been doing some fascinating work on municipal direct democracy, using digital technology to empower and enable citizen participation in governance. And so Barcelona en Común is the name of the political movement that won the municipal elections in Barcelona, and have done some very, very interesting work in the field of digital technology and civil governance. And I also have a chapter on their work in my book, Civilizing the State. So you can check that out if you're interested. Brian, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm just writing a little chat here about this too. I think it's long overdue that the activists of the world create a peer-to-peer network run entirely on GNU Linux software, non-proprietary. And there's I don't know if you're familiar with the term distribution, but there's several of them. Debian is the one I'm thinking of mainly, Ubuntu, all sorts, there's lots of them. But Debian in particular it was begun with the idea of becoming an operating system for the whole world. And I think it's probably the best one to go with. And also, in the early 2000s, there's over 1,000 programmers who have written it. It's probably the most respected of all these distributions of GNU Linux systems. And it's more than the operating system, it's the whole works. Like everything you want to do, you can do it and run on that system. And I think there's all sorts of reasons. I won't try to give a whole bunch here, but I've written a proposal along this, and I'm going to try to send it to you, or send you a link anyway, and you can decide what you think. And anyway, I think it would help processes like what we're doing right now greatly. And there are alternatives to Zoom, and they're included within these packages. One is called Jitsi, I think.
Can you include that in the chat?
Yes, I'm putting some of that in, and maybe I'll give a link to a proposed. Yeah, I'll give you a link to a Debian website and some information about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I also included in the chat a couple of references around, again, digital technology and the ideas behind Democratic Confederalism. The P2P Foundation, if you look that up and go to their site, they have thousands of articles on the subject of democratizing politics and economics and culture through the democratization of digital technology. In particular, the work of Michelle Bowens and Vasilis Kostakis have done some important research in this area. So if you check out their work, they too, address this issue in very interesting ways. So they're a source of ideas and case studies of how this is being applied in various places. Okay, we're reaching, I think, the end of our time here. Are there any other final comments that people would like to make before we terminate our discussion here?
I don't think with the time left that I can type fast enough to give all the information you want to, like the links and whatnot. I've got to find that. I don't know it off the top of my head. So I can get your email address off the, the toward Cooperative Commonwealth. So anyway, I'll be able to send it to you, and I'll send a link, and then you'll be able to present it, or maybe I could at the next one of these. I don't know.
Sure. So, so Brian, I guess you're part of the Synergia course on Cooperative Commonwealth, right?
Yes, but I've fallen
way,
way behind on it because my big concern is what I've just been talking about. I'm trying to make connections with programmers. I mentioned Debian programmers started to create within Debian something, they use the term now blend, a Debian blend. And what it is, is software, I mean, scripts, I guess, to help link the software that's part of the whole bundle in a way that will be useful to specific types of groups. Like there's one for doctors, for lawyers,
Mhm.
for children, for I forget what else. There's about 10 of them, and others in the works. And the one that's specifically for nonprofits, they got close to finishing it, but not quite. And they, you know, it's the people working on it got too busy. It's a volunteer, so they got too busy. And I'm going to send you a link to 2 sites. One, the general
Okay.
one for these blends. Yeah,
Okay.
I won't send any more. I'll just send you stuff.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Appreciate
Okay.
that. All right. All right, my friends, I think we're going to wrap it up. It's been wonderful hearing you, Nourshan. Thank you so much for presenting your framework of democratic confederalism and stateless democracy. Salua, to you, thank you for finally joining us and contributing to the discussion. This will be edited, this recording will be edited and sorted out and translated so people will be able to access it later. And our next lecture will be 2 weeks from today and same time. All right, my friends, have a wonderful evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Jade and the Global University for Sustainability, thank you again for making all of this possible. And of course, our good friends at the Civil Diplomacy Center in Northeast Syria, thank you for being part of this. And we'll see you all next time.